It's okay, it's okay. It's just me.
I'll always have fond memories of being in this movie and dealing with the people that I dealt with. That's a part of me that will always live on, especially on film. Once you've committed some sort of work to film or to radio or to TV, it never goes away. It's always there. So essentially I have memories that'll last a lifetime through my kids' lifetime. So, you know, it's a great thing, blessing.
Swamp's no place to be at night. Come on.
Performing as a child was, I guess, a natural instinct for me. I was always a theatrical person as a child. My father called me the con man because I always threw on different personas when I wanted to get things from people. So I guess it was just a natural kind of thing for me to get into theater and drama and doing things in the backyard with the other kids. So the role for me with Jude and Swamp Thing, what had happened, I was going to a school, a private school at the time, who the art director was really getting into theater outside of the school. And we did a few plays at the school, and then he suggested me to try out for an arts festival called Spoleto, which is big business in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I was living at the time. And he sent me out on this audition. I auditioned for that, got the role, and Giancarlo Minotti, who was the founder of Spoleto, suggested that I try something else. So he moved me towards trying out for this part. And at the time, you know, at that age, I didn't care. I just went. Seemed like pretty fun. So I went out, tried out for the part, not knowing that it was going to be a big deal. And the cool thing about it, when I went for the audition, I sat down and we did I got a meet and greet with the producer, the director, and some of the other associates with that company, Benjamin Melniker and Michael Eustlin. And they told me they had this plan to develop movies from comic strips, and they were focused mainly on DC Comics. Now, as a kid, I loved comics. Oh my gosh, I loved them. So I was very familiar with the comic Swamp Thing. As a child, I collected that comic book, and I was also familiar with the Marvel Comics version, which was Man-Thing. They both dealt with a man and a plant merged together through, you know, some sort of scientific mishap. But I was well aware of how the storyline went with both of those comics. So as a kid, I was definitely pulled into that. You had me riveted from the very beginning with that one.
Kicking it don't help nothing. You gotta punch it.
Thanks.
Nothing. Name's Jude.
Jude is a kid that you never really get a sense of why he is where he is. He is in the middle of this swamp all alone. He seems pretty wise for his years, and an old soul, so to speak. So his role is, I think, more so he bridges the gap from all the adults running around acting crazy to this kid that's there saying, hey, relax, I got this. You know, I deal with gators all the time. What's a big swamp creature coming out of the woods? So he helps Cable move along through the plot and connects the Swamp Thing, Cable, and then the rest of the crew together. Wes was the best. He never made me feel like I was some kid on the set. Basically, my interaction with Wes was he would tell me what the scene was. He briefly described the scene, and then he let me have at it. Most times I stuck with the script, but some things were improvised. But Wes was so easygoing, not overbearing, domineering, and as a kid at that time, I never knew that there were directors that were that way. So you know, Wes was just one of the guys on the set. He wasn't like the boss or anything. So
Don't be afraid, dude. You better say that to someone whose desk you ain't hiding behind.
one of the things that stuck in my mind, first day on location, it was pretty chilly that morning. We had 5 a.m. Calls. So I'm out there in a coat with my wardrobe on, waiting for my opportunity. So when it's time for my scene, I take my coat off and go to work. Well, they had a person there that held my coat and hot chocolate for me. And I'm like, what is this, man? This grown woman is holding my coat and my hot chocolate for me. You know, it was definitely an eye-opening experience as a child. But the crew, everybody embraced me. They treated me like I was one of their own. Nobody was condescending to me. They would take me out to do things, and a lot of them treated me like their little brother or whatever, but not in a condescending way, but like as a little kid brother, you know? I had a really good time.
You got nobody you can call, huh?
Thought I had. But when I did, those goons showed up back there and started making Swiss cheese out of your gas station.
Didn't pay your bookie or something?
Or something.
I had already known of Adrienne from watching her on Maude. So when I told my father that Adrienne Barbeau was there, he said, "Oh, you mean the lady from Maude?" I said, "Yeah, the lady from Maude's in this movie." He said, "Well, make sure you get to talk to her and find out what it's like to be with her." Adrienne was the coolest older woman that I had. Matter of fact, I had a poster of her on my wall, this is how I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I'm Reggie." And she says, "Oh, it's nice to have you." I said, "I'm playing Jude." This was on walkthroughs now. This was not when we went on stage. This was walkthroughs. My first saying to her was, "I have a picture of you on my wall, and I'd like for you to autograph that for me." Back then, she still did, pinup art or whatever. But she was the coolest. She was so cool that Adrienne actually came out, had dinner at the house. We hung out. Whenever we would go on location, or if we would move from location to location, she would insist that I would ride with either in her limo or whatever transport she was going. So she took really good care of me. I'm in her debt to this day. My father's a big movie buff. Once I told him that Dick DeRock was playing Swamp Thing, he said, "You don't realize who he is, but I'm going to show you." So my father took out an old VHS copy of a Dirty Harry movie. Dick DeRock is one of the heavies, and I think the enforcer. So when I saw him, I'm like, "Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy." So I came over and I said, "Mr. DeRock, I realize you're in this movie." He says, "Son, you are smarter than you look." And we, from that Mr. DeRock is this tall, imposing guy. So he says, "Come on over." This is while he's getting made up, which took, 4 to 6 hours of putting the makeup on. We sit there and talk, and he crack jokes and tell me stories, and of course I'm enthralled. But he was a great guy, and I just kept saying, "I can't believe I'm sitting here with Dick DeRock." Nicholas Worth got to be really close with my mother. She came out once for shooting, and he was such a good, kind-hearted guy. He always plays a heavy in these movies, but he is far from that. The guy was so nice, and come to find out, he found out that my mother was from the South. And he said, "Can she cook soul food?" I said, "Yeah, she can." He says, "I want to come over and have dinner one night." I said, "Well, let me clear that with my mom." So my mother, she loves to cook for people. So Nicholas came over and hung out with us, had dinner with us, went to church with my mother. I mean, he was a great, great guy. David Hess, another guy. In this movie, he plays a real tough guy. Nothing like it. He cracked jokes all day long. He made sure that nobody messed with me. He was a great guy as well. Louisa Jourdan, on the other hand, right before we started filming, he had a tragedy in his family. His son had committed suicide. I heard that he had jumped out of a hotel window. So he was in mourning, but Louis Jourdan was a seasoned, acclaimed actor, and of course he just drilled through it. But most times, when he was done, he was offset or whatever, and people gave him his space because of it. But he was, when I saw him, he was cordial. Now, Ray Wise was a guy who had started out in stage, but I remember him from the soap opera days. He didn't know that I knew who he was until I told him. And he said, "Man, where'd you get this kid? This guy knows all this stuff." So he cracked jokes as well. And every time I see him in something, Ray Wise is like the Energizer Bunny. He's like a cockroach. Every time you think he's gone, he turns up somewhere. He's been in films. Every time you see him, he's popping up in something. Every couple of years, he's popping up in something. So I'm happy to see that Ray has extended his career. Here it is into the new millennium. He is still doing things, so that's good for him. Good for him. But he was nice with me.
Jude.
At the end, I didn't see the whole thing strung together until the premiere. So you can only imagine, as a child, going to this big pomp and circumstance thing, and I see myself, 10 feet tall on the screen. Oh my gosh, that's the first time I saw the thing from beginning to end. And when I watch that movie, I think about all the things that were going on outside of the camera, all the things behind it, I remember all the things that were going on. Those are the two things that stick out in my mind. What was going on when we were shooting that scene, and how my voice sounded. You never get used to hearing yourself talk on camera or acting on camera. I guess you're always your worst critic when you get stuff like that. I did a few things afterwards. Of course, whenever things like that come out and people see you, there's some interest there. So I had some people call, and I got an agent almost immediately and had some calls about a few things. I ended up doing some minor things that were based right out of Charleston. There were a few films that were shot there, some plays that were done there. I guess one of the most popular things that anybody will probably remember from back then would be the North and South miniseries with Patrick Swayze. I did that as an extra. There was another movie about the first black cadet at the Citadel. I was an extra in that as well. It's funny, as far as having an interest in acting, I got away from all of that for a while. Life just kind of came at me. But in the last 10 years or so, there's been more and more people that have either recognized me, approached me, talked to me about it, and I have a good friend of mine that she's a writer, director, producer, and author, and she enlists my aid to help her do auditions, do read-throughs for some of her talent, and she really is pushing me to get back into it. And with these readings, every time I do one, I keep thinking, I can do this. I could do that. But the crazy part about it is people have picked me out of, and I'm talking out of a crowd, in the mall, at music festivals, and they'll walk up and say, I know you. I know you. But that's always an interesting conversation. But when I was a child, and up until I turned about 30 or so, I really downplayed that. I didn't want people to think that I was full of myself or I had an ego or whatever. So I really just downplayed that. And people would always say, but who do you know that's been in the movie? Who do you know? It took me some time to really appreciate the fact that I did something that a lot of people may never do, at least once in their life.
Oh, shit. There goes the neighborhood.